Memories of Tuam in the late 60s, 70s and 80s. Tuam was a totally different town then. Things seemed to be always so simple. People were so simple. I lived a simple enough lifestyle. I myself have great memories of the late 60s and the early 70s, or during the whole of the 70s, early 80s. I remember the small shops in Gilmartin Road. You had Catty Kelly's. Down the bottom of Gilmartin Road, you on the Galway Road, you had Nellie Fahey, and then you had Paddy and Mary. Mary did another shop down the Galway Road. In the 70s, you had the last of the Connacht Grangers, Stephen Smith. And they had a little house just a little shop off Clontour Road. Down towards the bottom of Lee Mellow Street, you had the late Ned Carroll. Ned was a big man, and Miss Carroll, they were a lovely family as well. And you had Eileen Ban, who was later taken over by Mrs. Brady, and then another family took it over. All those shops. And there was another shop in the lift, but I can't remember the name of that. The reason I'm saying all those shops, things were different, and people used to get tick. I mean, they get stuff today and pay next week, and they always seem to be on tick.
Yeah, that was the times. That
was the times that were in it. Imagine going to the shop and say today, look, they have no money. There's very few that do, and that's why we should always look after the older shop, the small shops. I think the important thing when it came around Christmas time was that the people that used to do the shopping, each shop would give them a Christmas box, especially the regular customers.
Yeah.
They get a Christmas box, and in that box you'd have the usual. You'd have the tea, the sugar, some tinned desserts, I suppose, and the likes of custard, and maybe a small Christmas cake. But they were the essentials. And some of the old people would get a half ounce of tobacco in it. There was other situations there where I remember going down for my grandmother, and my father sent me down on it. I might be only about 9 years of age, down to the Rustic Falls. There was 2 women there at the time, and they used to look after it. And they used to always kind of keep Scottish dogs or Highland Terriers, white ones. But you go into an alcove, there was alcoves, and I believe the alcoves are still there today in those pubs, and they'd send me down for a couple of 5 naggins of porter.
Right.
Which, Guinness, and they used to pour it from the tap. Now, that was before you had the tin Guinness that had the wickets on it and pour out. So this was in the early 70s. And those ladies would always give it to you because they knew exactly who it was for. Yeah, they put it on.
Yeah, different times.
And I poured slowly and leave it there and standing, and then pour it again and give you the two bags of 2 bottles of the 5 naggin and a half ounce of tobacco for my grandmother. That time we just had tobacco you cut off. She used to smoke pipe. I said women at the time, an awful lot of women, and that was around 1972. So I might be 71, 72. So I might be 10 or 11 years of age at the time. So it was unusual. Imagine trying to do that today. You couldn't do it. And you'd bring that up, and you'd say, bring that up to my old one. That's what you call her. You'd doctor up and say, my father sent me up with this. She'd understand it. And all the other grandchildren from the other families would do something similar. And I remember, one thing I remember was she'd take the 5 naggin out, open one, and put it into a little burner, a little pot.
Yeah.
Put it on her little stove and heat it. And sometimes I often seen her put a pork into it. And she'd take that, and imagine now today, people, unless it's cold, they won't take it. But it was a different era. They'd always like it, the Guinness hot. I don't know why, but that was kind of the format, they used to use. They used to call it, say that we were curing the porter. But we go on to those, and you had the likes of poor Catty Kelly, Mrs. Ahern, as she called herself, Mrs. Ahern, and she would also give a Christmas box, and she used to keep her own chickens up where the old houses off Clontour Road.
Yeah.
Derelict old buildings. And she'd have her own eggs. She'd provide briquettes, paraffin oil, and the mainstay. It's just a small room, but you couldn't imagine what you had it from paraffin oil to briquettes to candles to fuses to tea, sugar. The meat, hams and stuff like that. Things that actually mattered from laces to stuff that you would not find today, from a little tin ice. She had every sort of thing. It was a little treasure trove. I think I mentioned this before, that I remember in the mid-70s, her house going on fire. The house was completely burned. And I think for a long time after us as kids, we'd go in around the house. Thanks for God, she wasn't burned, but she was ingenious. She had a big shed at the side of the house, and she moved all her belongings, her bed, the whole lot, and moved her shop into the side of the house. And she sold from that, and people kept it, and she got it fixed back up again because there was no grants, there was no support for her, and there was no collections. She did it herself, and it just shows you the resilience that woman had.
Mm-hmm.
But times were totally different. People were kinder, and they tried to help one another. Then you go down to town around Christmas. I think after the 6th or 8th of December, you find geese, chickens, turkey on the squares every Friday and Saturday. Yeah. Times are an awful lot better. Christy Mannion would be on the square and he'd be selling the Christmas trees. And you'd have the likes of Paddy McKenna, who was a character in Gilmartin Road. Paddy and Bridgie. Paddy was a small man, very well-known character. He'd have some hens, he'd be selling them around the town, but he'd be also selling them in the square. You'd have people selling potatoes, turnips, and they'd ever sort of thing there. I remember Peter Fennerty, I think they used to call him, Pete Fennerty. He lived up on Stone Tour Road, and he lived at Stats College, and he'd come along with a stone of hay, and he would sell these hay. So he was selling all sorts of things around the Christmas thing. But there was a great atmosphere around. Christmas was so simple. You'd have turkeys hanging out the doors, shops, they were cleaned up. You'd leave them hanging there, and people would sell them, or chickens the same way. And people bought turkeys live and brought them home, and they cleaned them out themselves and let them hang out the back door for a week. I think it was around a week, around a week, just leave them hanging out on the back door of the house. They'd pluck them. It wasn't unusual for people to take the turkeys in, feed them, and just a week prior to Christmas, as it says there, kill them, clean them out themselves. As I think I mentioned before, you'd see the turkeys, there'd be still turkey eggs inside them, especially hens.
Wow.
The chickens, and saved them chickens,
Slightly grisly.
Different type of people weren't afraid of that sort of thing. It was a normal part of life. Yeah. I remember as a young lad, my father used to often get the hens when he's out the country, or sometimes to get them with Paddy McKenna, and he'd show us how we used to help pluck the hens but kill them. And sometimes we used to find it, I suppose the first time it was kind of gruesome enough, but you get used to it. So there's an easy way to do it is you twist the neck real fast, hen dead, but the hen would run around the place. It'd run around, I'm telling you, it'd run around for a minute, or you get a hatchet and just chop off the head. The chicken would run around. Headless chicken. Yeah. That's where it came from. And you'd hang it upside down, let all the blood drain out. Even the one you broke the neck with, you cut it off. And you just let it drain out for the day. You put it in kind of warm water and pluck it. Again, when I used to see my mother here, she'd take out whole eggs from the inside of the chickens, and they'd boil them. And there used to be different type of soup with different taste. Boil them, and some of them just to roast them. And they were nice, I suppose, different nice. And people were awful cheering at the time. They share potatoes or they share anything that extra they had. Yeah. To families, to make sure everybody was looked after. But different times, the shopkeepers, I remember McDonald's, and we had D.H. Burks, Joe Burks. It was the Spar, I think they used to call it at that time. And you had the VG, it wasn't Super Value. Yeah. You had all the little shops all over the town. And I think the last of those little shops still kind of surviving today is down across from the Grove. Sorry, down across from the Cathedral. What's the name of that little shop down there across from the Cathedral? It's
Quinn's, is it?
Quinn's. Yeah. Queen's. That's I think the oldest of the shops now left in Tuam. And I still believe that it gets a lot of support from people around. Yeah. And yet Heinz's gift shop was a treasure trove. I think it's running there now.
There was another shop kind of further up that road. I think it was Joyce's, wasn't it?
Joyce's.
Yeah, that was a pretty old shop as well.
That was a very old shop. Oh yeah, Joyce's. Yeah, that's close to the last 10-15 years. Yeah. Philip Joyce and the wife, they used to run that shop. Yeah, that was a nice shop. They were lovely people. And then you had up Dublin Road, the Hear's shop was a brilliant shop as well.
TP Nyland.
And TP Nyland there. Yeah. Yeah, I remember. And all those. But a lot of those shops are all gone. Like, when Carol passed away, the family took over the shop for a while. It closed. Then you had Cathy Kelly, her daughter-in-law died, and she moved down to Castlebar, but I believe she's buried in Tuam, and I must visit her grave, find out where it is. The Bradys are gone, and the bands. I think Eileen is still alive. It was a different area, and I always remember the green cheese stamps to make sure you got the green cheese stamps and throw in a couple extra. It was how people survived. Then we used to get the tokens of the cartons for the cartons of milk. I think it was Dawn Dairies for later on they used to use them, and you get the butter vouchers. You could use the butter vouchers for anything, and that's how people survived in the milk vouchers.
Nice one.
You get them on a monthly basis. And people remember all that sort of stuff. But then Keith was saying earlier on, he remembers around the Christmas time there'd be the likes of Murphy's Furniture there. Brian and Mrs. Murphy, Eileen, they'd have upstairs, they'd open the grotto and they'd have kids going into it. It was a great spot. It was a great spot, and it was a great furniture store. The family moved on, and when they have a garden centre out the Milltown Road, a few miles out the Milltown Road, and that's very successful as well. They were good people. I remember we started our first Christmas events, 1980, and we had no money, and we went to Eileen and other businesses around the town of Tuam with the likes of the Christmas thing, and actually she gave us about 150 Santa bags. That was 1980. I think they were selling at £2.50 or £2 a bag, or £1.50 a bag or something like that. She gave them all free to us. I have all those fond memories of Eileen, a lovely lady. And as Brian was a gentleman. And you have other shops then made donations like that, give spot prizes, and they were very generous. But look, I think the shops are getting hard enough to survive these days with everything that's bought online. But different stories. Have you any thoughts on it, Keith?
I suppose just going back to when I was a child, one of the first Christmases I suppose I can remember would be of Murphy's furniture store. I wouldn't have paid too much attention to downstairs, but yeah. I can remember walking in the door and there would be mats and carpets, and down the bottom I think there was Santa's grotto, from what I can recall, and upstairs then was just a treasure chest. It was something unbelievable to see all these toys and catalogues and things, and something I always remember kind of walking down from Parkmore to see it would be the smell of peat in the air. From once you get that cold kind of frost coming in and the smell of peat, you'd nearly smell Christmas from kind of late October, and you could kind of walk out into the estate and go, God, it smells like Christmas. Yeah. And I just think
you're right there, because especially over the Christmas time, you'd always get the smell from Garvey's bakery, the bread, the fresh bread, the bacon, and the Christmas essentials, and also lightens up Tornadale Hill. They had that unique smell. But around Christmas, you'd always kind of get those smells. And within the shambles thing, you had you used to have a fruit shop. I was run by
that's right, down on the left-hand
side. Yeah.
Oh, was it O'Connor's or something?
O'Connor's, yes.
I don't know how I even remember that.
O'Connor's there, and you had Homely Bedding were there up to the 76, 77, Oh. It was a great time. But you're right, you're 100% right there. I think my experience or memories of Christmas at Santa, I remember a cousin of mine, Anne Ward, she was Johnny Locke's daughter. She coming in and writing letters for Santa, and I might be only about 6 or 7. But you take the letters out, she'd write what you wanted, you get your cap guns and stuff. There's always simple things we'd be looking for. But she'd get the letter then, she says, no, how do you post it? She'd open the range and say, no, throw that in there. You let the letter, she says, no, that letter has gone to Santa Claus because the smoke goes up the chimney and it goes to him as a letter. It was a great novelty and a great, God bless Anne, I don't know where she is now. I remember they were kind of fond memories of her till she got married and moved away, but the bottom line is have those memories. But for Christmas, then you get a simple thing. You might get an apple and an orange, a couple of cap guns. Bugles were a big thing with kids, and maybe a couple of dinkies, and that was it. It was so simple. And children were very content with that.
I suppose throughout the generations, people didn't know any better. As toys and electrics and generations evolved, people's expectations grew, I suppose. Yeah. I still remember getting the little He-Man toys, He-Man and Skeletor, and but back in those days, even getting a reflector for your bike
was a big thing.
In the Kellogg's cornflake boxes was magic. But one thing I remember about Christmases in the 80s when I was growing up is a lot of the times it was snowing, which you don't tend to see anymore. I remember cycling a mountain bike, and I was probably very privileged and very lucky to have a brand new mountain bike on Christmas morning. But I remember cycling it in the snow, and sure, I was doing more sliding than cycling, but no way was I coming inside.
Funny enough, you says that, because my memories the 60s and the 70s and the early 80s, especially the 70s and 60s, or at this time of year, would be all frosty. There'd be frost everywhere. You'd have snow at Christmas. You'd have frost in January and February, and it was a normal thing. The winds wouldn't seem to rise till around March. You know what I mean? When you'd have April showers and stuff like that. All right, you'd have rain probably coming into March, but it seemed to be. We used to live in Gilmartin Road. The footpaths slide every night. We'd have a slide. We'd throw water on it. If roads would freeze over that fast, and coming down Clunto Hill, we'd have slides coming down Clunto Hill as well, or Clearby Hill as they call it. The years seem to be more crisp, and the thing about it is that you'd always see I can remember always kind of seeing the stars at night time. When's the last time you see stars in the sky? Very, around the towns you don't.
In Parkmore as well, just where, I don't know, you'd probably be aware, Joe, an area that we used to call the Black Path. There was a little footpath down there that was kind of curved, and it used to go down to Cook's house and down to where Matty Ward's house was. But we'd be out there with the bottles of water every night if we thought it was going to freeze. And sure, as soon as we'd be throwing the water at it, there'd be some neighbour out with the bucket of salt, putting it over.
The old people, we didn't realise the older people,
No, but we'd spend hours there.
Yeah, but I don't know, is it just memories? But as far as I'm concerned, we've got weather in Ireland. It seems to have got wetter. Ireland was always associated with rain, but not all the time. You'd have certain amounts of periods of November, maybe a bit of October coming in, a bit of frost, but November, December, definitely frost, and January, February, you'd always a bit of frost and stuff like that. All right, you'd have rain in between, but not as like the rain we have now and the storms we were having before, prior to Christmas. We didn't have them. I don't remember them, don't remember them. Look, it's not saying it didn't happen, but
it's amazing to hear you talking about the apples and the oranges, because I know I've even heard my own mother talking about that. But I suppose at the time things were an awful lot harder. Like, there was times that the only person that would eat meat at the kitchen table would be the working man of the family.
That's right.
And so times were very, very hard, and people didn't have anything. And I suppose that's why Christmas was so special, because neighbours got together and there was a sense of community and a sense of giving. And I think everything now these days is just so broad, and social media, and people have just kind of shriveled into
themselves.
Yeah. And they don't really want to see, they don't have any need. If you want something, you go on Amazon and you order it and it's delivered to the door. You don't need to see your neighbour. Yeah. In fact, an awful lot of people wouldn't know who their neighbours are. But I know, growing up in Parkmore, all the families that would have been in a close proximity to our house, we would all know each other's key number on the back door.
Yeah.
There used to be that lock, and they're still in production today, but I know even as the Stankards used to live actually across the road from us, and we would know the number of their back door key. So if somebody was locked out, you'd say, well, our bathroom key actually fits your back door key. But we would know this to 9 or 10 different houses. But there was never a thing of security or needing to lock a back door.
You didn't have to worry about stuff like that, because funny enough, you said that we grew up the 80s up to my father died in 1990. God rest his soul. Our house was never to be locked. The back door was never locked, or the front door was never locked. There was no need for it, because family would be coming in and going, and the same was with my uncles and the aunts and all. Most people on that road never locked the doors. There was no need to lock the door. There was no fear, because you'd be surprised who'd be out at night time keeping an eye. There was always people around. And the same thing with said in this avenue. There was a bigger trust, Church View. There was a huge trust around, and we didn't have that fear factor wasn't there. I think social media has driven it, but also people are gone me fienders. They're looking after themselves, and if they can't make it, they take it. That sort of attitude, And I think community itself has broken down to a certain degree. Even extended families, they're no longer visiting, and as you says, David, they want something now. It's there, and even the families that are kind of haven't got the few bob, some stuff that they can't afford, and it's a sad situation to see the way society is going.
Yeah, I think society has evolved because everybody seems to want to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be seen as left wanting, or, even good, hard working class families now,
They're getting it hard.
They are, but they also, it's about what job title can they get, even if the wages don't reflect the job. So it's like, people don't want to say that they're working somewhere because everybody's trying to keep up and trying to maybe look a little bit more.
Yeah.
But one other thing I remember is the tinsel. Remember there used to be tinsel hanging from the ceilings,
yes.
and you would go from the four corners you'd go from one corner to the other.
Like right across, and that was beautiful, because I was saying that actually with my son yesterday. I said to him, I says, the decorations, most people only put up a Christmas tree now, and it's very simple. Most don't put up decorations, but I said to me, all tinsel and the paper stuff going across the ceiling, down along the stairs. Now it's just Christmas lights.
Now it's all LED lights, projector shows, and
I just told you how we moved on, but I think the generations before us were a very humble people. Humility actually breeds generosity and simplicity, and that's what we have lost. We've lost our humility. Now we hear people saying, "Well, they're a proud family." People should have nothing to be proud of. You know what I mean? I think we need to be more humble and more supportive of society in general. And today we look down at people or look down at anybody. I think it's a terrible thing. We only should look down at somebody who trying to help them up as they're fallen. That's my motto anyway, Okay. And we're all equal, I think, and we all should be supporting one another. I think we need to go back to society, support the community, and bring communities back together again, because the way the world is going, society is in many years, and it's not being alarmist, it's on the verge of collapse. If you see what's happening all over the world, like, wars and threats of wars and stuff like that, something as big is going to happen, and they're all preparing for it.
Yeah.
So people are going to be left shocked because they won't know how to survive, or they won't know how to support one another. So we need to kind of go back to that, first of all, with our families, bringing families back together, getting neighbours to revisit, talk. Even if it's only at the corner or outside the bloody gate, people should be talking. And they should be seen, know what's going on. Because there are an awful lot of families that have nothing, and they won't say it and they don't admit it. But one time ago, if a family were struggling, you'd know about it. And there was no talk about it. All of a sudden, potatoes would appear at your door, or a visit or some messages to be just left there. Nobody had ever said anything. It just dropped there, gone. Nobody knew anything about it. And there was never a talk about it. They'd never speak about it. They'd never say anything about it.
And nobody was looking for thanks.
Nobody's looking for thanks or anything like that. That's what I'm saying.
For likes, for views.
That's the thing about humility. You don't have to let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. And people were better that way. And I know an awful lot of people that did that, and an awful lot of people that made donate, never look for thanks and never says anything. And that's the best way to be. Yeah. And then you have the Christmas songs, and you'd hear the like of Bing Crosby and some of those other great country western singers as well. And you'd have Wizard, and you'd have Moding, you'd have all those great bands singing Christmas songs. I think you'd have Boney M, I suppose.
Boney M, yeah.
Mary's Boy Child. Yeah. Even before them, there was another band just to have it out, and but they made it famous. But you'd have all those little Christmas songs, like Christmas time, what you'd be expecting. It was so simple. And, to me, everything should be simple. And I try to approach things, and I would advise people that are listening with families.
Was there much of an atmosphere of town?
Oh, they had my favourites.
Like, would there be much lights, like back in the 70s?
The lights were very simple. There was the string lights.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, they were just white.
White string lights. You might have the odd coloured ones, and some coloured ones. But
they were just strings of light bulbs.
Yeah, strings of light bulbs.
What I recall in the 80s.
And they put coloured ones in it.
The 80s, 90s were kind of mostly blue and red.
Red, yeah, blue and red ones, yeah.
Maybe the odd green ones on here and there for a bit of look.
Yeah, to liven things up a bit.
And Christy Mangan
would up Dublin Road.
And Christy Mangan would always give the Christmas tree for the square, and his son Christopher does the same thing today, Yeah, and as I said here on, you see the geese and turkeys, they'd be starting to come out now the windows of the butchers, and everything was so localised, but simplicity. So my advice is go back to a simple Christmas. We're gone too far away.
Do you know what I recall as well is the hampers and the bingo prizes when it used to be in the community hall. And do you remember there was the community bar underneath the community centre of Dublin Road?
Oh, yeah, Star.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. That
was great, yeah.
And I remember being brought there after bingo. If my mother would be going to bingo, and if somebody won a box of sweets, you'd be sitting in the corner whilst the adults would have a drink, and you'd be eating the box of roses and having a Coke, and there were good times.
Cheers.
And again, an awful sense of community, because, like my own mother's sister would be there, and neighbours and different people. And
there were grand people up there, I had a surprise 40th up there when I was 40 years of age, and that was a good while ago.
Well, want to say, like...
Yeah, that was a while ago, but they were lovely. Like, I was in the herein for having a few pints for the birthday. I was in April, and the man with me says, "Come on, we go up to the stair, the bar up there." I can't remember I can't think of one of the Brady
complex.
The complex. Yeah, the complex. Yeah, we go up to the complex. We go up. I know. I said, "We wait here now." No, I said, "We go up and have a few pints up there." Some of the lads up there, we were up with them. Walked in, Jesus, jam-packed. Surprise!
Because there used to be indoor football upstairs.
That's right.
And
yeah.
there was badminton, not badminton. Yeah,
it was a great complex. It's a pity they never did it up and refurbished it and let it open. I suppose it probably can't too costly to run like everything else, but it would.
And it was a while ago then as well, the hampers with the Celta campers, and people would be throwing away a couple of pound every week to these hampers, and come maybe a week before Christmas, and God, there'd be a bottle of Coke and a bottle of 7-Up and biscuits, and you could order your toys that way. And
I did remember too also the Christian brothers in the early 70s, 60s, early 70s. They used to hold Christmas parties for children. It used to be probably on a Saturday, and they'd have Santa Claus there, and they'd give them food. They'd have food prepared, they'd have refreshment prepared for them, and they'd have kids from all over the town going to it, and they'd have each child would get a present. You'd either get a gun, or you get a train, or you get a football. To see what you wanted, and they used to do it. And we forget about these little things. There was a lot of goodness there. I think you'd have the nuns to do something similar with the girls, but also you'd have the nuns go around to families. I remember Sister John, whether it be different parts of the town, she'd go around and looking after certain families and make sure the families had something for Christmas. She'd do the weekly with other families, So you had good little nuns like Sister John and Sister Marcelina. You used to do it later on in life, I did with some families, and Sister Joe Tarpey and all those great little nuns. They used to go around the town, and this was done very discreetly and help people out, Sister Loretta. People were hard pressed, People were hard pressed, and people didn't realise it. You had Sister Leo Hackett. She used to do it with Father Paddy Williams years ago, help families out. I'm talking back now in the 60s and the early 70s when things were kind of scarce enough. Things started to improve in the 70s, for a lot of families. But,
one thing I can recall, and I suppose it is greatly missed as the generations get older as well. I can recall the Christmas dinner that you used to do down here.
We started.
That used to be a massive.
Yeah, we had that going for a long, long time. We had that going.
I'm sure the logistics involved in that was something crazy.
We had it going for about 22 years.
Wow.
About 22 years we had going for, and what happened was it became too weak for us. Yeah, because we used to have up to 180 people coming to it, and it was becoming the cost was prohibitive, and trying to raise that money, the concerns about it, and a lot of the people were gone. They started off with us originally, the likes of Anne Dwyer and Sister Joe Tarpey, Mary Flat, all those people started to get old, Anne passed away, God rest her, and some of the other women then, the likes of Willie Ward and my sister Mia McDonough, they used to be very involved with Annie. Those people, once they were gone, it had an impact, you know what I mean? Because they were used to hold it up.
That's a huge commitment from the people who run it, like to give up 22 Christmas days of their life to give back to others.
I could tell.
That wasn't just show up for an hour, eat and go home. That was probably be there from morning until night. Not just the serving and the preparation, but the clean up and everything that
all the people with Birdie Hardeman who used to run St. Bennan's that time, they used to do soups out there for us, and sometimes they'd help with the dinners. Then we go up here and we cook it ourselves. Bernard and his staff were absolutely brilliant. St. Benet's out the way road.
Do you know, you probably wouldn't be able to do something like that these days without, I don't know, without somebody reporting you for not having the correct facilities or for not having HACCP trained staff or for, like everything.
We did, and we actually ended up buying a cooker, and we were able to cook up to 200 dinners in one day. But 100 dinners in once and it'd be done. And I think I was capable of cooking 400 dinners. We bought the cooker, but eventually we don't eat for it. But then the latter days we led up with John Murphy, Centre Dublin Road, and they actually start cooking the dinners for us.
Oh,
and they did it at a very. It was cheaper, actually, way cheaper to get it off them. And a fair play to John and staff up there. They were fantastic. John Murphy, Central Dublin Road. I can't ever praise them enough. John was always a gentleman, as was Ray and Martin, all those, and made sure everything was ready with, Mary McDonough to make sure the dinners are ready. And he'd always give it a special price for us. He was very good to people. But it was an adventure even down here cooking, and all the people that give their time. A lot of them are deceased now and gone, and all do with people for church who used to come in Gilmartin Road, Galway Road. So that was it. Like, Christmas times have changed so much, saved so much, and simplicity of it, Keith. You touched on an awful lot of stuff there. And I suppose when I'm thinking now later on, a lot of other stuff will come back into my mind.
And maybe, I'm sure Christmas was, even in the 60s and 70s and maybe even a bit before as well, a very hard time for traveller families.
My God, they were grown up. Yeah.
That were exposed to the elements.
I suppose the families that lived on the side of the road in the 60s and 70s, and some still lived up there to the 80s, times were hard. We look back to it with rose-tinted glasses. Winters were very, very severe in them, the cold. And they weren't very hardy people, like all Irish people were, but they were trying times. But they still did their celebrations in one way or the other around Christmas, and they had their own memories and their own stories, and nice stories to be told.
I suppose going back, and I know that you yourself, Martin, you've got very strong Christian beliefs and Catholic faith.
Yeah.
But I suppose another thing as well that we're seeing a little bit of is a little bit of erosion of the word Christmas across an awful lot of places now. It seems to be more festive seasonal greetings and kind of removing the word Christmas. You see with an awful lot of larger corporations trying to be more politically, I suppose, inclusive of different religions and things. It's
listen, but it takes the whole meaning from Christmas, for Christmas and what Christmas is about. Christmas is a Christian festival, it's about the birth of Christ and a celebration of that. And I think a lot of the older generation and the travelling people and the Irish people in general, the old folk, they knew exactly what it was about, But it's not only part of our culture; it's part of our heritage. Irish people died for their beliefs. They starved. They wouldn't take the soup. They convert. The faith is still very strong with the young travellers. All right, a lot of them are not going to mass, but to have the faith, they understand what it's about, and it's ingrained. But I sincerely believe that what's happening now with the erosion, that's going to come full circle again. We have an awful lot of families that are looking for something and they don't know what they're looking for, and that there's a need there. There's always a need. There's a spiritual need, but people realise it or not. But the penny will drop at them at some stage. We don't wonder why a lot of things are going bad in countries and why does God permit this to happen and that to happen. It's our choices. We make choices. Things can go bad for us in a certain area, but we can't expect God to intervene. One thing He gives us all free choice. And if something happens within a community or thing, that's down to choices. It can be official choices made, bad decisions made by officials, bad decisions made by government, bad decisions made by people not respecting people for who they are, And I know people will say, well, that wouldn't be rightly correct. Well, it is. And, I know I've gone away from a small bit of Christian values. Look, at either stand for something or you stand for nothing. And I believe that something is worth standing for. And the Christian faith, even if a person doesn't believe or totally believe in it, support it, people have to respect their own heritage, the heritage of their ancestors, the heritage of their parents, and their overall culture. And my culture is and my heritage is ingrained in the Christian faith.
I suppose one of the things that I was trying to come at from that was I suppose kind of was wondering if just over the years, if the commercialization of Christmas has watered it down to the fact where
It has.
It's kind of gone away from, like, commercial entities won't benefit too much from religions who don't celebrate Christmas.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, is that somewhat the reason that it's been watered down also? So
some of it might be, but there's people down there that make the difference whether it's a festive holiday or not, won't celebrate it because it still be associated in their mind to Christianity. You know what I mean? So you've got that issue, and to play to people, if some people want to celebrate it as a Christmas holiday, that's up to themselves, but they should not try to take away from what it's all about. It's to other people, it's Christmas, it's about celebrating thing, but a lot of people have lost the meaning of it as well, because it's all about huge gifts and about huge giving. The giving should be alright. If people are down, they should be given food, they should be given alms, they should be given supporting families, and that's what Christmas should be all about. Like the Vincent de Paul collecting and helping families out who are going through a tough time. Also, it's not about that, it's about the company. The loneliness of some individuals, the loneliness of the elderly. It's about visiting and checking in on your neighbours and trying to do your best for them. Look at that, Joe. That's all I've got to say on the overall matters. But Keith brought up some very, very good stuff there, and stuff that I want to reflect on and constantly. Because you're right, we'll have to look at something.
I was only talking Bunyuk off the top.
I know you.
Sorry if I interjected a bit too much.
Not at all. All right.
Peace is filling every heart tonight. Children laughing, voices sing with cheer. Love and joy are everywhere near. Beautiful Christmas, full of delight, love and hope, shining so bright. Bells are ringing, hearts are free. Jesus was born to